He looked at me with that same cold, steady gaze he used in every briefing. "Detective Harris," he said, voice low but sharp. "You'll do what I tell you. No questions." It wasn't a request. It was a command, one that cut straight through the air like a slap. I nodded, pretending it didn't sting. But inside, something cracked. I'd worked 12 years in that department. 12 years proving I wasn't just a token female detective. I'd stayed late, taken the tough cases no one else wanted, and smiled through the condescending jokes that came with every good girl pat on the shoulder. But that day, Captain Reynolds made it clear. Loyalty meant obedience, not integrity. The case involved a missing teenager. A 16-year-old girl named Emily Grant. Her mother swore she'd been last seen near a warehouse connected to a known drug ring. The evidence pointed one way, to the captain's informant. But Reynolds told me to close it quietly. "Let it go, Harris. The kid's probably a runaway. Don't make noise where it's not needed." He didn't even look at me when he said it. That night, I sat in my car outside the precinct, the rain tapping the windshield like a metronome counting down my patience. Something in me whispered, "This isn't what you became a cop for." But I also knew, disobeying an order from a senior officer wasn't just career suicide. It was isolation. And in a department run by men who closed ranks fast, isolation could be deadly. Still, I couldn't let that mother's face haunt me. So, quietly, I made a decision that would change everything. I'd follow the truth, not his command. I told myself it was just checking a few details. But deep down, I knew I was crossing the line. I started with Emily's mother, a quiet woman named Denise Grant. Her hands shook when she handed me her daughter's photo. A smiling girl with braces and a messy ponytail. She could have been anyone's daughter. "She wouldn't just run off," Denise whispered. "She called me that night. Said someone was following her." I felt the chill crawl up my spine. The call log showed the last number Emily dialed was registered to a prepaid phone, the kind dealers and dirty cops liked to use. When I ran it through the department system, access was denied. Blocked. That never happened, unless someone inside had locked it. The next morning, I walked into the precinct pretending everything was normal. Reynolds was already there, sipping coffee, chatting with two sergeants like he didn't have a care in the world. He looked at me. "You dropped the Grant case?" "Almost," I said, forcing a smile. "Just waiting on a few routine checks." He smirked. "Good. Don't overthink it." I nodded, but as soon as I reached my desk, I plugged in a flash drive. Copied the files. All of them. If he was hiding something, I'd find it. That night, I went through every document in my small apartment. I hadn't eaten all day. The sound of traffic from outside felt distant, like another world. At 11:47 p.m., I found it. An internal memo, one that shouldn't have existed. It linked the captain's informant, Marcus Dale, to an operation that was protected under internal supervision. Reynolds' signature was on the bottom. Emily's name was scribbled in the corner. Witness. She wasn't missing by accident. She was silenced. I sat there, staring at the screen, my pulse pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. If I took this to internal affairs, Reynolds would know. He had friends in every corner of that building. I had no allies. No one to trust. Except one person, my old partner, Mike Carter. He'd left the department after exposing a corruption case 2 years earlier. They ruined his career, but he never backed down. So I called him. When he picked up, his voice was tired but kind. "Harris? Haven't heard from you in a while. What's going on?" I took a deep breath. I think I just opened the wrong file. There was silence on the other end, then a low whistle. "Meet me tomorrow. And don't use your work car." That night, I sat by the window with the flash drive in my hand. Rain again. Always rain in this city when something bad was about to happen. I should have felt scared. But I didn't. I felt awake. Because for the first time, I wasn't following orders. I was following my own. Mike met me in a small diner just outside the city. The kind with flickering neon lights and stale coffee that's been reheated one too many times. He looked older than I remembered. Lines carved deep around his eyes, hair grayer at the edges. But when he saw my face, his expression changed from surprise to concern. "What did you find, Harris?" I slid the flash drive across the table. He plugged it into his laptop, scrolling through the files. His jaw tightened. "Damn," he muttered. "Reynolds is running a ghost op, unofficial surveillance, hush money, informants tied to dealers. This is bad." "I think Emily Grant saw something," I said quietly. "Something she wasn't supposed to." Mike leaned back, rubbing his temples. And he told you to drop the case. I nodded. He looked up, eyes steady. You know what happens when you go after a ranking officer? I know. He sighed. Then at least be smart about it. You need protection, documentation, timestamps, backups in more than one place. We spent hours creating encrypted copies. He showed me how to store data on hidden drives, how to track internal communications without triggering alerts. When I finally drove back home, it was past midnight. My apartment was dark except for the blinking light of my answering machine. One new message. I hit play. Harris, Reynolds' voice filled the room, low, calm, and cold. I heard you've been asking questions. Don't forget who signs your evaluations. You're a good cop. Don't ruin that. Sleep well. The silence after that felt heavier than any scream. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the machine. He knew. Every part of me wanted to pack a bag and run. But I couldn't. Not after what I'd seen. Not after hearing Denise Grant cry for her daughter. So I did the only thing I could. I wrote everything down. Every conversation, every name, every date. Then I emailed one file, just one, to a trusted journalist I'd met years ago during a community outreach program. Subject line, if something happens to me, open this. The next morning, I walked into the precinct like nothing had happened. Reynolds greeted me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Morning, detective, he said smoothly. Ready for a fresh start? I smiled back. Always, Captain. But under my jacket, taped to my ribs, was a recorder. It was running. I was done being silent. The precinct felt different that morning, colder, quieter. People looked up from their desks when I walked in, then quickly looked away. That's how you know rumors have started, when the silence follows you like a shadow. Reynolds called me into his office before noon. His door was half open, blinds tilted just enough to keep eyes out but not ears. Close the door, detective, he said. I did. Slowly. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit down. His tone was casual, but his jaw was tight. The fake friendliness of a man used to control. I heard from Internal Affairs this morning, he began. Seems like someone's been leaking internal data. Files. Case notes. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? I met his eyes. Calm. Careful. No, sir. But if someone's compromising cases, I'll help you find out who. He smiled. But it wasn't a smile. It was a test. You're loyal, Harris. I always said that about you. He stood up, walked around behind me, and closed the blinds completely. Then his voice dropped. I've had your car checked. Your laptop. Your locker. You wouldn't hide anything from me, right? My throat tightened, but I didn't flinch. No, Captain. Nothing to hide. He circled around slowly, standing close enough for me to smell his aftershave. The same cheap, sharp kind he'd worn for years. Good, he said. Because I'd hate to see you make a mistake that costs you everything. He opened the door again like nothing had happened. You can go. I walked out, pulse hammering, but my hand was steady when I stopped at the ladies' room sink. I pressed the side of my jacket, feeling the recorder still taped there. Every word. Every threat. Captured. That night, I drove to Mike's place. He lived in a small one-bedroom on the outskirts of town, walls covered in old police commendations that meant nothing anymore. When I played him the recording, he just shook his head. You've got him, Harris. This is enough to start an internal probe. I want to do it right, I said. If I file the complaint myself, it'll vanish before it reaches the review board. I need someone outside. Mike stared at me. You mean the journalist? I nodded. He exhaled. You sure you're ready for what happens when this goes public? I thought about it. The years I spent holding back, keeping quiet, watching others rise while I did the work, and took the blame. Then I said it firmly. Yes. I'm done being scared. He gave me a small, proud smile. Then we moved tonight. By midnight, we'd encrypted every file and sent it. A complete record of the cover-up, the threats, the case notes. Then we waited. At 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from the journalist. Got it. This will take time, but I promise, it won't die in the dark. I stared at those words for a long time. Because for the first time in months, I felt hope. But hope has a cost. And by morning, I'd find out exactly how high that cost was. I didn't even make it to my desk the next morning. 2 internal affairs officers were waiting at the front entrance, badges raised. Detective Harris? One said flatly. You're being placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The whole precinct froze. Phones stopped ringing, chairs stopped squeaking, just silence and eyes. Reynolds stepped out of his office, pretending to be shocked. "What's going on here?" he asked, feigning concern. The IA officer didn't even glance at him. "We received a report that Detective Harris accessed restricted data and compromised an ongoing investigation." My stomach dropped. He'd beaten me to it. I didn't resist. I let them take my badge, my weapon. My fingers trembled only once, when the cold metal left my hand. As they walked me out, Reynolds met my gaze and whispered just loud enough for me to hear. "I warned you, Harris. You should have listened." That moment, that smug, knowing look, burned something inside me to ash. Mike called an hour later. "They raided your office," he said. "They're trying to make it look like you stole evidence." I sat in my car in the parking lot, the rain smearing the windshield. Again, the damn rain. Always there when everything fell apart. "What about the journalist?" I asked. "She went dark," Mike said. "Might be verifying the files. Or someone scared her off." For the next few days, I was officially suspended. No pay, no badge, no authority. Just silence. But even without a badge, I still had a voice. I spent those days digging. Not as a cop, as a woman who refused to be erased. I called Denise Grant again, the missing girl's mother. "I'm not on the case anymore," I said, "but I haven't stopped." She started crying. "They told me to stop asking questions. Said it was dangerous." "Who told you that?" There was a pause, then a whisper. "A man. He showed a badge." That was it. The final confirmation. Reynolds wasn't just covering up a mistake. He was part of something bigger, something that used the badge to control and silence. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the window. No badge. No power. No one left on my side except Mike. But I wasn't scared anymore. I was angry. And anger, when it's clean, when it's earned, it's powerful. I called Mike again. "We're not hiding anymore," I said. "We go public." He hesitated. "You sure? Once this hits, there's no going back." I looked out at the rain and thought of Emily Grant's photo. That smile frozen in time. "I'm sure," I said. "They took my badge. I'm taking back my name." That night, we met in a parking lot behind a 24-hour grocery store. The journalist was there too, tired, shaken, but resolute. "I verified everything," she said. "Tomorrow morning it goes live." I nodded. Then tomorrow the silence ends. None of us spoke after that. We just stood there, three people who'd decided that fear had already taken enough. The story dropped at 7:03 a.m. By 7:15, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Calls. Messages. News alerts. Police captain under investigation for cover-up. Whistleblower detective claims corruption in missing teen case. My name wasn't in the headline yet, but everyone knew. I sat on my couch in a sweatshirt, coffee untouched, watching the local news anchor read the same files I'd once buried in department folders. My hands were steady, but my chest felt tight, the kind of tension that sits between fear and freedom. Mike called first. "You did it," he said. His voice was a mix of pride and disbelief. "It's out." "Yeah," I whispered. "It's out." But victory doesn't come clean. It comes with backlash. By noon, the department released a statement. "We take these allegations seriously, and an internal review is underway." A hollow line I'd written myself, once for someone else's scandal. Then the smear campaign began. Anonymous sources claiming I'd acted irrationally, that I was emotionally unstable, that my relationship with the missing girl's family had compromised professionalism. Reynolds was behind it. I knew it. He was fighting the only way corrupt men know how, by destroying the credibility of the woman who defied him. At 3 p.m., my mailbox overflowed with reporters. Cameras, microphones, questions shouted through the noise. "Detective Harris, were you suspended for misconduct? Did you fabricate the files? Are you seeking attention?" I shut the door, sat on the floor, and for the first time since this began, I cried. Not because I was scared, but because the truth, even when it comes out, still costs so damn much. That night, there was a knock on my door. When I looked through the peephole, my breath caught. It was Denise Grant, Emily's mother. I opened the door and she just stood there, eyes red, voice shaking. "They found her," she whispered. My heart stopped. "Where?" "She's alive," she said, tears streaming down. "In a safe house." The journalist called me. Emily, she'd been hiding. She saw something the night she disappeared. The informant, the drugs, the money. I felt my knees weaken. "Oh my God." Denise grabbed my hand. "You didn't give up on her. You didn't let them bury her story." That moment, right there, made every sleepless night worth it. But even as relief washed over me, my phone buzzed again. A blocked number. I hesitated, then answered. Reynolds' voice came through, calm as ever. "You think this is over, Harris?" he said. "You made me bleed. And I don't forget who cuts me." Then he hung up. I stared at the phone, pulse thundering. The storm had broken, but it wasn't done. I wasn't just fighting for a case anymore. I was fighting for my life. By dawn, I knew he was coming for me. Not in the dramatic movie kind of way, but the quiet, calculated way men like him always do. They don't attack. They erase. The next morning, my bank card stopped working. My email login was invalid. By noon, someone had filed an anonymous complaint claiming I'd stolen department funds. Mike called furious. "They're trying to frame you, Harris." Classic move: smear, isolate, destroy. "I expected this," I said. He's scared. But fear wasn't mutual anymore. I'd lived through his threats, his manipulation, the slow erosion of my confidence, and I wasn't that woman now. That afternoon, I went to the courthouse. Not as Detective Harris, but as a citizen. With the journalist's help, we filed an official complaint, not internal this time, federal. The U.S. Attorney's Office accepted the evidence. Every file, every recording, especially the one from his office, the threat behind closed blinds. By evening, the story had spread nationally. Captain Reynolds under federal review for obstruction of justice and evidence tampering. The media camped outside his house. He issued a statement calling the accusations malicious lies from a disgruntled employee. But then, Emily Grant gave her testimony. A trembling 16-year-old girl, in a quiet room with lawyers and cameras, telling the world that a police captain had tried to buy her silence. That was the moment everything cracked. Reynolds was suspended by midnight. Half the department claimed they had no idea, even though we all knew they'd looked away. The next morning, I was called to testify. I walked into the courthouse with my head high, hair pulled back, suit pressed, every step heavier than the last, but steady. He was there. Captain Reynolds. No uniform this time. Just a man in a gray suit who looked smaller than I remembered. He didn't glare. He didn't smirk. He just stared at the table, avoiding my eyes. When the prosecutor asked me why I disobeyed his direct order, I didn't hesitate. "Because I took an oath to protect the innocent," I said. "Not the powerful." The room went silent. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a subordinate or a threat or a woman who'd gone too far. I felt like a cop, the kind I wanted to be when I first put on the badge. After the hearing, reporters swarmed again. But this time I didn't hide. I stood on the courthouse steps and said into every microphone, "This isn't about one bad officer. It's about every woman who's been told to stay quiet. Obedience doesn't equal honor. And silence isn't loyalty." Then I walked away. That night, alone in my apartment, I poured myself a glass of water and looked out at the city lights. For the first time in months, there was no rain. Just calm. I didn't know what would happen next, whether I'd get my badge back, or if I'd even want it anymore. But I knew this. I hadn't obeyed his orders. I'd followed my own. And that was enough. It's strange how quiet life becomes after a storm. Weeks passed since the hearing. My name cleared, Reynolds indicted, and Emily finally reunited with her mother. The city moved on, but I didn't, not right away. I still woke up at 5 a.m., out of habit. The silence of my apartment felt too big, too clean. My badge sat on the kitchen table, inside a small evidence bag they'd returned. I didn't put it back on. Not yet. One morning, I drove to the river, the same place I used to clear my head after night shifts. The sky was pale blue, the water still. No sirens, no voices, no orders. Just wind. For the first time in years, I felt peace. I thought about everything that had happened, the fear, the humiliation, the threats. And then about what it took to fight back. The courage to say no when everyone demanded yes. People think strength comes from power. But I've learned it comes from choice. The choice to speak. To resist. To stand alone if you have to. Later that week, the department called. The new chief wanted to reinstate me. He said, "We need officers like you, ones who don't flinch from the truth." I thanked him, but I didn't say yes. Because somewhere along the way, I'd realized something. I didn't need the badge to protect people. I could do more, mentor, teach, speak, help others find their voice before it was taken from them. So, I started my own foundation, Project Emily. A program for young women who dream of joining law enforcement, but are afraid of the system that still doubts them. On our first day, I looked around the small classroom filled with women who reminded me of my younger self, nervous, hopeful, fierce. And I said, "You don't need permission to be brave. You just need to start." As they smiled, I realized this was freedom. Not the kind you fight for with weapons or power. The kind you earn when you refuse to live small. I looked out the window at the sunlight spilling over the city I once feared would break me. Now it was just home. And for the first time, I whispered to myself, not as Detective Harris, but as me. I followed my own orders. And I was right to. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Write it in the comments.